Have you ever wondered why we celebrate New Year's? Why, of all days, we've picked this one to celebrate worldwide with fireworks, countdowns, and resolutions? It's a question that has probably crossed your mind as you've watched the clock strike midnight, marking the beginning of a brand new year. But have you ever stopped to ponder what makes this day so special? Let's embark on a journey through time to uncover the curiosity and intrigue around New Year's celebrations. It's an exploration that will take us back some 4,000 years to the ancient civilizations that first marked the changing of the years. And like the hands of a clock, we'll circle back to the present day to understand how these celebrations have evolved and why they continue to captivate us. Our story begins in ancient Babylon, where the first recorded New Year's festivities date back to around 2000 BC. Here, the arrival of a new year was not marked in January, but in mid-March, with the first new moon following the vernal equinox. The Babylonians observed an 11-day festival known as Akitu, marking the sowing of barley, the first grain crop of the year. Fast forward to the Romans, who initially marked the start of their calendar year in March. But in 46 BC, Julius Caesar introduced the Julian calendar, which closely resembles the one we use today. He moved the start of the year to January 1st in honor of the Roman god of beginnings, Janus, whose two faces allowed him to look back into the past and forward into the future. And so, from its humble beginnings in ancient Babylon to the grandeur of Roman festivities, the concept of a New Year's celebration began to take shape. But this was just the start. As time progressed, so did the ways in which people celebrated the start of a new year. Today, we may not be celebrating the sowing of barley or honoring Roman gods, but the spirit of new beginnings remains a central theme. From its humble beginnings to today's grand celebrations, the journey of New Year's celebration is quite fascinating. So stay tuned as we delve deeper into this captivating story. Our journey begins in ancient Babylon, around 4,000 years ago. It was a time when the concept of a year was still a novelty, and the idea of celebrating the onset of a new one was just taking root. The Babylonians, being a highly advanced civilization for their time, had developed complex mathematics and astronomy skills. They identified the first new moon following the vernal equinox, the day in late March with an equal amount of sunlight and darkness, as the start of their new year. Now, why they chose this specific day, you ask? Well, it symbolized the rebirth and renewal of life. A perfect occasion to kickstart a new year, don't you think? Now let's talk about how they celebrated. The Babylonians didn't just throw a one-night party. No, they went all out with an 11-day festival called Akitu. This wasn't a small gathering with a few fireworks and a countdown. This was an epic celebration, filled with rituals, ceremonies, and yes, a whole lot of feasting. Each day had its own unique set of rituals, and the festival was seen as a time of renewal and rebirth. The climax of this grand festival was when the Babylonians paraded statues of their gods through the city, eventually reaching the temple of Marduk, their chief deity. Here, the Babylonian king would ceremonially submit to the god and receive a royal mandate to rule for another year. Quite a different way to ring in the new year compared to our countdowns and champagne toasts, isn't it? So the Babylonians didn't just celebrate the new year, they made it a spectacle, a grand event that symbolized renewal and rebirth. And perhaps it's this spirit of celebration, this joyous welcoming of the new while bidding farewell to the old, that has carried the tradition of New Year's celebrations through the ages. So, the Babylonians were the pioneers of New Year's celebrations. But how did this tradition spread worldwide? As civilizations grew and cultures intermingled, the tradition of New Year's celebrations spread far and wide. But how did this happen, you might ask? Well, let's take a journey back in time to find out. The ancient Babylonians were the first to celebrate New Year's, but it didn't take long for the tradition to catch on. As their empire expanded, so did their customs. The seeds of celebration were sown, blossoming into a tradition adopted by many. From there, the tradition traveled to the grand city of Rome. The Romans, with their penchant for festivities, embraced the concept of New Year's celebrations with open arms. Now, their New Year's wasn't always on January 1st, but that's a twist we'll unravel later. The Romans, much like the Babylonians, had quite the expansive empire, And with that, the New Year's tradition spread to the farthest corners of their realm, reaching as far as Britannia to the north and Egypt to the south. But the tradition didn't stop there. It journeyed even further, reaching the distant lands of China. The Chinese, with their lunar calendar, marked the new year with the second new moon after the winter solstice, a tradition that lives on to this day as the Chinese New Year. Their celebrations, filled with dragon dances and the loud bangs of firecrackers, are a sight to behold. And so, from the ancient city of Babylon to the vast lands of China, the New Year's tradition continued its journey, echoing through the sands of time. As it traveled, it evolved, shaped by the cultures and civilizations it encountered, each adding their unique spin to the celebrations. By the time the Middle Ages rolled around, New Year's celebrations were commonplace across the globe. Whether marked by a feast in a king's court or by the lighting of lanterns in a small village, the coming of a new year was a cause for celebration for all. The tradition of celebrating the new year had indeed become global. But when did January 1st become the official day? It was Julius Caesar in 46 BC who declared January 1st as the official New Year's Day. A proclamation that might have seemed rather arbitrary at the time, but has since become universally recognized. So, what led to this decision? Well, it all started with the Roman calendar. The Romans, like many ancient civilizations, based their calendar on the moon's phases, but the lunar calendar was about 10.5 days shorter than the solar year, causing a discrepancy that built up over time. Enter Julius Caesar, a man of action, not content to let the calendar drift out of sync with the seasons. He was also eager to leave his mark on the world. And what better way than to reform the calendar? So he sought the help of Sosigenes, an Alexandrian astronomer, who advised him to follow the solar year like the Egyptians. Thus, the Julian calendar was born. A solar calendar with 12 months totaling 365.25 days. To account for the quarter-day discrepancy, every fourth year was made a leap year. Ingenious, right? But why choose January 1st as the start of the new year? The decision was not random. January was named after Janus, the Roman god of beginnings and transitions, who was depicted with two faces, one looking back into the past, the other peering forward into the future. A fitting choice for the start of a new year, don't you think? This change wasn't immediately accepted worldwide though. In fact, it was another 1600 years before the Gregorian calendar, an updated version of the Julian calendar, was widely adopted. But that's a story for another time. So there you have it, the story of how January 1st became the official New Year's Day, a testament to Julius Caesar's influence and the power of a good idea. With January 1st established as New Year's Day, celebrations took on a new fervor. But how did we get to our current traditions? Well, buckle up, because we're about to dive into that next. From ancient Babylon to present day, New Year's celebrations have come a long way. Indeed, the evolution of these festivities is as dazzling as the fireworks that illuminate our skies as we usher in another year. Let's take a trip down memory lane to the early 20th century, when New Year's resolutions became a popular tradition. The practice of setting goals for the upcoming year can be traced back to the ancient Babylonians, who made promises to their gods at the start of each year. In our modern context, these pledges often take the form of self-improvement goals, such as eating healthier, exercising more, or learning a new skill. But what's a New Year's celebration without some sparkle and noise? Fireworks, a staple of modern celebrations, have their roots in 7th century China, where they were believed to ward off evil spirits. Today, they're an integral part of New Year's festivities, lighting up the night sky and creating a spectacle of color and sound that captivates audiences worldwide. And let's not forget the iconic Times Square ball drop in New York City. This tradition, which began in 1907, sees a glittering crystal ball descend a flagpole, reaching the ground precisely as the new year begins. This spectacle, broadcast globally, symbolizes the passage of time and the hopeful anticipation of a fresh start. From house parties to grand parades, from intimate family gatherings to lavish citywide celebrations, New Year's Day is celebrated in countless ways around the globe. But no matter how it's celebrated, the spirit of the occasion remains the same. A time of reflection, resolution, and renewal. So, next time when the clock strikes midnight on December 31st, remember the rich history of New Year's Day and the centuries of celebrations that brought us to this moment. New Year's celebration, a tradition that has stood the test of time, has a fascinating story to tell. The roots of this festivity stretch back to the ancient Babylonians, who first marked the start of a new year with a massive religious festival. Over centuries, this tradition spread far and wide, adapting and evolving with each culture it touched. Then came the official recognition of January 1st as New Year's Day. Thanks to Julius Caesar and his Julian calendar, we have a consistent date to kickstart our resolutions. And let's not forget about the modern celebrations that we all partake in today. From the iconic ball drop in Times Square to the popping of champagne corks at midnight, these customs have become synonymous with the New Year's celebration. So there you have it, the intriguing journey of New Year's celebrations. Here's to another year of keeping this ancient tradition alive.